Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have with us another special guest, and he goes by the name of Marc Toth. So who is Marc Toth? Without saying too much, I'll share with you this. He's a thought leader in the cardiovascular space. He's been in that space for over 25 years. He currently leads a team of professionals in cardiovascular ambulatory surgery centers and clinical operations, and he works for Atlas Healthcare Partners. He also co-founded a company, an ACA cardiovascular development company, that was based on the development and management of hybrid cardiovascular centers. He's a frequent contributor to the Cath Lab Digest, and he routinely speaks at national cardiovascular meetings on cardiovascular outmigration trends. He's gone so far as to even help with, the government affairs board bringing cardiovascular expertise to the lobbying efforts and adding additional cardiovascular CPT codes to Medicare's covered procedures list for surgery centers. So Marc's doing quite a bit. If you're someone out there that's thinking about getting into medical device sales or transitioning to a different field within medical device sales, this is an episode you absolutely want to listen to because, again, Marc's a thought leader in the cardiovascular space. And if cardiovascular is something you haven't done before, then this is something that you want to learn from and really dig deep into. So, as always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Marc, how are we doing today?
Samuel, I'm doing great. Nice to meet you.
Definitely. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Marc Toth. I currently work as a president of cardiovascular services for Atlas Healthcare Partners. Atlas is a company that develops, owns, and manages ambulatory surgery centers, and my division specifically operates cardiovascular centers. So we perform cardiovascular procedures including stenting, pacemaker implantation, and peripheral arterial disease. Prior to this role, I started a company that built and developed surgery centers like this. And what led me to that was a long career as a med device rep in the cardiovascular world, launching products for big companies like J&J, several startup companies with transformational cardiovascular technology, building sales teams, creating distributors internationally. After that, I decided to go back to grad school and become an M&A advisor. And I was working with the same physicians I used to sell stents to help them raise money and open their own outpatient center. So that's my evolution from med device rep into M&A work. And now, ironically, I'm on the other side of the table and I'm the buyer of the medical device reps that come into our office trying to sell us their gear into our surgery centers.
All right. I want to make it crystal clear. And we're going to dive back into your history, but let's just make it crystal clear. So, because what I'm hearing is med rep, entrepreneurship, and then from entrepreneurship back into the corporate space. Is that correct?
In a sense, although I started a surgery center company from scratch in 2017 and we sold that. So I'd say that was entrepreneurship. I joined this company when we were 50 employees. We're now 800 employees.
Wow.
So still part of that, let's get things on the ground floor, build it and launch it. So We're corporate now. We're 150 million in sales. So I guess we're corporate, but I've been here since basically the beginning.
Amazing. Okay. So right now, go walk through us just one more time. What is it that you specifically do in your role right now?
So what we do is we find cardiologists to invest in surgery centers with us. We own a majority position. We then develop, build, get Medicare approved, and open a surgery center with cath labs. So this is an outpatient cath lab outside the hospital, standalone building. And then we syndicate, which means we sell shares for physicians to invest. So once they invest, we're partners, right? It's a whole different relationship because now we're partners with the physicians. And we have a team that does HR, and we have an IT team. we do revenue cycle management, we do procurement, and we do Medicare accreditation and contracting with the payers. So the physicians come in, they do their case and they leave. We have 6-minute room turnovers. We don't have call schedules. We're not open on the weekends. We're an 8 to 5 shop. Staff loves to work there. The physicians like the efficiency. The patients like it that their copay is lower. Our cases are about half the cost of a hospital's case. So patients have lower copay. And the physician now has skin in the game. So the physician gets paid his or her professional fees for the case, like they normally would at the hospital. If they get $500 to put in a stent in a hospital, they get $500 to put in a stent in our surgery center. So for them, it's the same. The difference is they don't own any part of the hospital, but they own the surgery center. So once profits are derived and that physician owns 5 shares, he or she gets 5% of the profits. So
hence why they're partners and not employees of Atlas.
They're partners. And now when it comes to device selection and they have skin in the game, it's their company, it's their profit. Do they need to use the $400 wire or can they use the $200 wire? So it's
we all know where they're going. Yeah.
It's a different mentality. So having them as partners, I was on the other side of the table trying to sell them the $400 wire. And now I'm trying to have them use the $200 wire because we're about profitability. So I'm in a unique position, I think, to talk to your audience. And I think I'm different than I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, as we talked earlier. And it's a great show, by the way, just great people.
Thank you.
And I love the stories of how they got into device. I could tell you my story, but that was 100 years ago. And I want to give perspective of what it's like, A, from the other side of the table, and B, what your options are and will be, whether you're 25 or 55 and you're in devices or you're just starting. If that's the end game and you want to be a device rep until you retire, hallelujah. I have plenty of friends in their 50s that are they're device reps. Good for them, making good money, good work-life balance, and a good career. Others like myself, I got to a point where I don't want to chase doctors around anymore. I need something different. I had that entrepreneurial spirit or whatever you want to call it that led me to go to grad school and do different things. So that's the message I hope to share with your audience is you're excited to get into med device right now and you want that first job. Awesome. You want that Tesla that Medtronic lets you drive or whatever. And the money's good. And the president's clubs. To talk about my career, I started, selling heart-lung machines back in the day. And I won 8 president's clubs and my wife loved it because we took glamorous vacations.
Let's go back there. I want to hang out. I want to spend a little bit of time there. So was it out of college you jumped right into the industry, or was there a traditional period where you're trying to figure it out?
Oh, I was very blessed. I went to business school at the University of Michigan and came right out with a couple job opportunities, one in insurance, one in retail, and one for Baxter Healthcare, still around today, in Dog Park, Illinois. Went in with a training class of 15 other new reps. I'm still friends with 5 of those guys, lifelong friends.
Amazing.
And I got put into the dietary products division. So a little humble pie. You come out, I'm from Michigan, with business school, I'm going to sell medical devices. And they're like, hey, kid, you're going to sell mashed potatoes.
Dietary products.
So I sold mashed potatoes. If you've ever been in the basement of a hospital where the tray line is, most people don't even know what a tray line is. A tray line is a line with a conveyor belt, and the trays roll down it, and the food's put on the trays, that goes up to the person who has a diabetic diet, the person who has this diet. Anyway, feed the hospital. So I was very fortunate to get that first job with a high-profile company. That led to the second job, which was selling heart-lung machines, a 6-figure job. I was 23 years old. Thought I just, hit the jackpot. Was really, really fortunate, and had great success in Michigan. And like I said, President's Clubs 8 times with my wife. Had the ring, the jackets back then. So just baller status, and had a great run. I then left to do a couple of startups. Some went well. Some didn't.
So wait,
well.
Pause.
Yeah.
You left. So we gotta see the mentality. Where was your head when you said, I'm killing it right now. I'm gonna leave this and I'm going to go try my hand at entrepreneurship.
Yeah, good question. I look back at that and I think really it was kind of intellectual boredom. I did it. I knew how to sell these heart-lung machines, a device is called an oxygenator. I knew how to sell that. I knew my market. I knew how to hit my number every year, like we all do. We manipulate our number and we sandbag a little in December, and then we hit our number and we make presents. Figured it out. So I got to that point where I figured it out. That industry was getting a little stale because heart surgery was transitioning to cardiology, to stenting. Stenting was invented in the late 90s. This was about 2000. And the number of hearts open heart surgery was going down. So some industry changes, some personal changes, and I had a chance to go with a very sexy startup company that had minimally invasive heart surgery, thoracotomy access for cabbages. Just, it was sexy. So I chased the startup dream. I chased it 7 times.
Wow.
Equity, and we're going to get rich and the whole thing. And it really turned me on. It stimulated me. And that led, to a couple more startups. In between there, I had an opportunity to launch Johnson & Johnson's fastest billion-dollar product ever in Johnson & Johnson's history. It was a heart stent. It was a heart stent called Cypher. The first drug-eluting heart stent in the world was April 23rd, 2002. I can remember the date it was launched. And we went out and sold $1 billion worth of that in the first year. And it was J&J's fastest billion-dollar product. So I've done the startup from scratch, built sales teams to try to sell a new device, and I've done the large company launch.
So with these startups, 7 startups, and then when you mention it, you kind of, it's your past. So you're like, yeah, I did some startups, nothing. But we got to know, how does someone do 7 startups? Was it you did one startup and we were successful? Then okay, but make money from that. Now let's do another one. We're successful, make money from that. Or was it a different type of experience?
So there was almost always a key friend and professional colleague that took me from one to the next. Heartport was the first one I did. Some Heartport guys left to chase the next dream. They brought, hey, we need a guy in the Midwest. Let's bring Mark along. Then I got into management. Hey, we need a region manager in the Midwest. Let's bring Mark along.
And all of them reached completion, or you were doing some things at the same time?
All the device companies either failed miserably, crashed and burned. We could have a whole podcast on that. Or exited. 2 of them exited to Bard. Ironically, I worked for Bard twice with 2 exits. Kind of funny story there. Usually get a 1-year contract with the acquiring companies. I went and launched internationally for Bard, had a great run going to Europe, this, that, and the other. But, you learn a lot. You learn more in those failures than you learn in the successes. So if you're in a tough spot now and you're struggling to get punched and your device doesn't work, or the FDA is after you, you're struggling, hang in there, because that makes you stronger. And I would submit, when I looked at resumes, and President's Club, 176% to plan, I killed it. Sometimes we don't want to put those failures on our resume, but really that's when you grow the most, in my opinion.
Hey, those are the facts. Those are the facts. Okay, so startup after startup finally led you to Atlas Healthcare with your position now and your role now. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like. Again, I'm assuming you were called into Atlas. Talk to us about what it was like when you were wrapping up your last entrepreneurial venture and you said, you know what, let me grow Atlas. What was going on there?
Yeah, here's something I certainly want to share with your audience. To use a hockey analogy, you want to skate to where the puck's going to be. So right now you're excited to get that first job, or you're interviewing for another job. That's great now, but where do you want to be in 3 years and 5 years and 7 years? I know that's like a cliche to ask that, but really, what does one want out of their med device or their med sales career? And I got to a point somewhere, I think when I was around 40, that I just didn't want to sell anymore. And I think selling is even region management. I was, VP of sales, built teams, you're selling, right? That's what you're doing. So for me, it took me down a road to go to grad school and become an M&A advisor and help raise money and help doctors run their businesses. So more of a collaborative effort and a consultant rather than just a catheter salesperson. That stimulated me. That gave me kind of intellectual stimulation, helped me grow and take my position with the physicians maybe to a different level, from rep to consultant. From there, I started to become a self-advocate. And I think you've got your side hustle with the podcast, which I respect the heck out of. I really found my side hustle in developing and helping physicians start these surgery centers. There's a lot to learn in building a surgery center. You don't just open a building and turn the lights on and have a surgery center. So what I saw and heard is what everybody was speculating, is that 5 or 6 years ago, people were speculating that Medicare was going to approve heart stenting in the surgery center. And people felt that was a watershed moment for more of these surgery centers to open and start doing hearts. So I started writing about it. And suddenly I became the subject matter expert and was asked to speak at meetings and publish this article. And I really just hustled to editors. And if anyone's trying to hustle articles, editors of these journals love content. And if you track them down, they usually want to get paid, because many of the articles in those journals are vendor sponsored, right? They'll see sponsored by GE or sponsored by Boston Scientific.
Sure.
But if it's content without a sales pitch, they love it. And I had a couple articles published in Cath Lab Digest, and that led to others, and speaking engagement. So that self-advocacy helps kind of put me on the map in a national perspective. And then we had a dozen centers, and then that company got some notoriety. That then led Atlas to come after me to say, hey, we need a guy to run our cardiovascular division, because they read articles that things are going to take off in CV out migration. So I call it out migration. Cardiovascular procedures leaving the hospital and migrating to outpatient centers. And that shift is on, and that shift is in high gear. And for the next 10 years, many analysts are bullish that that's going to continue to be the shift. I happen to be the one that wrote about it. I didn't really blog, but I wrote about it. I spoke about it. So if anyone out there has the side hustle and is looking to do something different, or just become the subject matter expert, and you don't have to know anything different than everybody else does. If you can articulate it, publish it. I like to write articles. I call them listicles. When we've all seen listicles, right? 5 reasons Medicare is going to improve stenting. Absolutely. 4 ways to increase your profitability in your surgery center. You don't have to be a genius and recreate the wheel with 4 reasons. You have to give 4 logical reasons, not plagiarize, but everybody else is talking about it. And if you can blog about it, podcast about it, tweet about it, write about it, it really can put you in a position that I'm very blessed to be in, where now I'm the one going to, I won't name, a big device company's leadership forum, and I'm speaking at that leadership forum.
Wow.
I used to be a sales rep at that company 20 years ago, right? And now I'm speaking to their leadership in a different role. So that's my point of the listeners to this podcast who are getting into or trying to make a move in med sales. Oh, I can't wait to get that job selling pacemakers, or I really want to get in that capital sales, or I want to get out of pharma, or I want to get into pharma. Those are great goals. I love it. I love the hustle. But where do you want to go from there? Where's the puck going to be in your career? Do you want to go into healthcare administration? Do you want to go in the surgery center world, right? There are a lot of different directions to take. So that's what I hope I can encourage people, that may not be the end of your destination, that awesome job that you're in that cool Tesla that you get to drive. From,
it almost sounds like you're encouraging everyone, entrepreneur or employee, you got to have an exit plan. You got to have a plan, a transitional plan of where you want to take things to in that next phase of whatever your life looks like. And it's going to change. The change is going to come no matter what you want to do. What kind of change do you want to experience? And in order to do that, you have to think steps ahead. So that's great.
What things in life do we do that we don't have a plan? If you don't have a plan, what are you doing? If you don't have a target, I was a big golfer, and reading a book, Ben Hogan used to be super focused on his target. Hey, hit it down the middle of the fairway. No, I'm going to hit it at that little tree on the left-hand side of the fairway and try to land it right there, right? Really specific goals, and having a plan to get to that goal. So as things are changing, I challenge your audience now to consider what happened in the last 2 years with COVID and the pandemic, and what I know has happened with the lockdown of reps getting into hospitals. Rep tracks and these vendor devices that are meant to keep reps out of the hospital. What does that look like today? Is that going to continue? Or is the role of the rep going to be even harder than it was 10 years ago, where you're sneaking up the back parking lot, stairwell to meet the doctor before he goes to his car, right? All the tricks that we've used to track down the doctors, hospitals are making it harder. And I think COVID's given them an excuse to shut things down. So if I'm not mistaken, if it's getting tougher, even access, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, you're the blogger. How do you differentiate yourself? Well, you know a lot about surgery centers, and you can talk to the physicians about something other than your gadget. If all you do is talk to them about your gadget, and you can't bring value about, hey, did you read the article on out-migration trends? Did you read the article about what happened in this office-based lab and why they're shifting to a surgery center? Bringing more value than just selling your gadget, I think, can get you a long way.
Absolutely. And you know what? That actually brings me to an interesting question that I'm going to throw at you, because I remember 20 years ago in the very beginning, and they were saying reps are going to be, done. In 20 years, the sales reps will not exist. And then I was told that 20 years before that, they were saying the same thing. And 20 years later, they're saying the same thing. I love the fact that you're on the other side now, and you've had that entrepreneurship journey in between, all within the same realm of healthcare. Where will you say the medical device sales rep is going to be 10 years from now? Do you believe that there'll be as many? Do you believe that there'll be more, or many less, or none at all? What's your take?
Great point. You're right. 20 years ago and 10 years prior to that, yeah, new device reps are done. I'd love to see data, and you may know it, Samuel, how many cardiology reps or how many pharma reps or how many imaging reps were there in 1999, in 2009, and 2019. I'd wonder what that would look like. I would guess it declined.
You know what? Believe it or not, so I've looked at some data, not as far back as the 1990s, but representatives in the pharmaceutical and the medical device space, the rate is growing.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'm off. I would say two things about the future of med device reps. My guess would be, and my perspective from the other side of the table, is a rep with a technical background is more valuable than one without. I didn't have one, so this isn't me. But when the nurse comes in and he or she is, RN, hey, I worked in a cath lab for 10 years and now I'm selling you this device. Okay. Street credibility, clinical credibility, you know what you're doing. So does that mean that companies are going to hire more nurses? I don't know, but I would think that would be a trend. And I'm going to have to go with the same story from the last 20 years. That they'll be cool. I'm going to have to go with that. And then COVID accelerated it. Maybe I'm wrong. But access to the hospitals. I remember when RepTrax wasn't even around. Is that still around, RepTrax, or is it a different name?
Yeah,
now?
it is. There's a number of RepTrax and competitors. There's all types of systems out there. But it's funny because you would think that. So let me be 100% transparent. The data I looked at was pre-COVID, right? I think it went up to like 2017 or something like that. However, even though access has gotten challenging, companies still see the value in having a sales force push a message. Like that has not gone away. And to your point, more specialized helps, but there's still this belief that the more numbers we have to push this message, the better chance we have of being successful. Mm-hmm. With COVID in mind.
I would submit this, that as we see out migration trends, so just for some quick data, there's about 6,500 surgery centers in America, 6,500 surgery centers, spine, pain, ortho, GI, and now cardiology is fast growing, ophthalmology. These centers all have highly compensated positions as leaders. The leaders of our centers, we call them CEOs. They're running, $20 million businesses, and they make six figures plus, and they have a pretty good lifestyle, and they don't take call, and they don't work weekends. Pretty good career path if you're a tech or a nurse in a hospital and maybe you want to get out. That's, I think, another option. Somehow being involved in the outpatient surgery center world is a pretty good place to be. I think hospital administration jobs are, I think they're going away, right? As hospitals consolidate and try to cut costs. And there's a lot of fat, let's be honest, in bureaucratic hospitals. But if you still want to take care of the patient, if that's still important to you and you want to make good money and have a good work-life balance, working in a surgery center is a pretty good lifestyle.
So does Atlas hire people like that as well?
Yes.
Nurses that want to step into a space where they're helping manage a surgery center.
Yeah, a surgery center typically has three management positions. CEO is a leader, a DON, director of nursing, he or she manages the nurses, and then a BOM, a business office manager, who runs a $20 million company, right? The CEO is running that with 10, 12, 15, 20 staff members, a pretty nice 7 to 5 schedule, not a hospital where you have call and nights and weekends. Small building. We're really big into culture. In the culture we build here, we want Atlas to be the company that everybody wants to work for. So culture is our foundation. So we want to make that a great place to work, higher on the pay scale, just a great place to work. So I'm not trying to dissuade anybody on this podcast.
Not at all.
But I want to offer,
this is a good avenue.
Yeah, suggestions and options to, I'm a nurse in the cath lab and I hate call and I hate weekends and I want to get out of the hospital. Well, maybe an outpatient center makes sense. Maybe a device company makes sense. So just another option.
So what are the qualifications? So for a nurse, let's take example, a travel nurse, and they're saying, you know what, I want to be in one location. I'm not sure I want to be a medical sales rep or clinical specialist, and I'm curious about what's going on with this surgery center business. What role are they most eligible for?
So it depends on their background, but we have pre and post-op nurses, just like you have in the hospital, right? You come into the surgery center, you're pre-op nurse, you leave, you see a post-op nurse, so pre and post. scrub techs, rad techs, radiology techs, circulators in the OR, and scrub techs, right, that pass instruments. So essentially every job that's in the hospital is just done in a small building with 2 or 3 rooms instead of 20 ORs, and a busy schedule. It's not like they're sitting down eating donuts, but it's busy. But the doctors own part of it. It's just different culture.
Sure.
The docs are on your team. You're on their team. It's not hospital versus doctor, and you can't use that why your doctor didn't go before the value analysis committee. The doctor's like, I don't want to go to a value analysis committee. I want that device. And so it's a different mentality.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder too, because you said culture is such a big piece of Atlas. I love that. Does that culture spill over into these surgery centers through the partner? For example, does the physician that you bring on to the team kind of adopt the culture of Atlas, or is that something that's even vetted before you even allow that surgeon to be a partner?
A great question. We can't really vet that, but they better toe the line. They're going to see the culture, and they're going to be an owner. That's the difference. In the hospital, what do they have? What skin do they have in the gun in the game of the hospital? None. They have skin in the game. They wrote a check. They wrote a 6-figure check, most likely, to buy into that center. And you're darn right, they want the nurses and the techs and the staff to love on them, and vice versa. So it's just, all I can say is it's different. I'm not trying to make a plug for coming to work in a surgery center, but it's a different.
Right. No, I mean, it is what it is. If it's a great opportunity for someone, whoever's listening right now, if they see, like, you know what, I can see that, then they need to hear this. So don't hold it back.
Yeah, we have about 30 of these centers. There's 6,000 out there. So there's plenty of, mom and pop owned ones. 4 docs own one. And there's a couple big national companies, Tenet and Optum, both have surgery center divisions, and they own hundreds and hundreds. So there's lots of opportunities.
So are we going to see more of that, large corporations or companies becoming corporations like Atlas? You mentioned Tenet. Are we going to see more and more just players kind of step into this space and buy up as many surgery centers as they can?
Yeah, when Optum and Tenet both paid crazy numbers to buy these surgery center companies, I think everybody took note. I've often said, and I don't know if I've written about it, but I probably will. My projection is the device companies, the DePuys, the Smith and Nephews, the Strykers, the Boston, the Medtronic, the Abbotts. I think they will start buying surgery center companies, because it's becoming increasingly more difficult to differentiate your product versus the competitor, right? So if my widget, my hip, my pacemaker is similar to my competitors, but I now own the surgery center and I control the inflow of inventory, I think it's a win for the device companies. I don't know how it's going to work out legally. There's a lot of legalities behind that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see pharma or device companies buying surgery centers. We're certainly going to see insurance companies buy, like Optum is their insurance product, because they want to send their patients. The other term we use for these centers, they're value-based sites of service. So we do the case for half the cost of the hospital. So who loves that? Insurance companies, because it's half the cost. Medicare loves it. Patients love it. Doctors own part of it.
Which gives everyone involved more flexibility to do what they want to do that's best for the patient.
Right. So where's the puck going to be in value-based care? It's not going to be at the big bloated hospital with a huge parking deck and, follow the green line to get to the cath lab and follow the red line to get to the cafeteria. It's going to be, these buildings are 10,000 square feet-ish. They're 2 to 4 ORs. You park right in the front door. You get your pacemaker put in. You get your hip replaced, and you drive home that day. So, drive home with a hip, but you know what I'm saying? You leave quickly. So again, this isn't, I'm not plugging on your podcast for surgery centers, but maybe this will educate, some of your listeners that the shift is on. There's 6,000 today. In 10 years, I don't know, there'll probably be 10,000 surgery centers. They're not going away. And Tenet, I don't know if you know this, just real quick, Tenet announced 2 years ago that they're not building any more hospitals. They're the largest hospital chain in the country. They're not building hospitals. They're building surgery centers. So the future isn't massive hospitals, right, with big parking decks. That's not where most care is going to be delivered. Highly acute care, of course. Trauma, ED, sure. But routine, hip, knee, heart stent, pacemaker, gallbladder, GI procedure, in and out, do it in a surgery center.
Has it caused a bit of a scramble amongst powerful hospitals to get their hands on as many surgery centers as they can?
Samuel, did I just tee up that question to you? That's like such a perfect question. It's like we did this ahead of time.
We didn't though, everybody. We didn't. That's the cool
Uh,
thing. Please go ahead.
it's such a good question, asker. Boy, so the short answer is many national health systems are figuring out that the outmigration is on and they want to be part of it. So my company was founded by an investment from Banner Health in Arizona. Banner's a $13 billion health system. They saw the outmigration. They said, we want to be part of it, but we're a hospital system. We don't know how to build surgery centers. Literally, they had
Right.
6 surgery centers and they were a hot mess. They formed Atlas in 2018 and said, build us 40 more, take over these 6 and make us profitable. So we're at 30 now. They're all
Wow.
profitable. And we've
Wow.
had now other health systems. A major health system in Michigan has also invested in our company. And we're building 30 to 50 centers for that health system in Michigan. So the short answer to your question is health systems are getting it. Some still bury their head in their sand, and I'm not worried about outmigration. We're going to live without it. Some of the health systems are waking up to value-based care.
Wow. It's about to get real exciting in the space of healthcare in these next few years.
Through that, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So this is great. You know, you're in a powerful position now. You're literally growing an organization. You are on the other side. So talk to us a little bit about now that you've been on the other side and you've really had experience, right? You had your own business with it, and now you have more experience with it, doing even more than you were with your own business. You know, I'm sure you had an approach to how to be an ultimate medical device sales rep when you were a medical device sales rep, especially with all the success you had. What looks different though, coming from this highly experienced other side that you would have told that guy?
Yeah, I guess lessons learned or what I see now is the lack of self-awareness or EQ. If you're familiar with emotional intelligence,
Absolutely.
self-awareness is one of the key components in life, and especially in being a good salesperson, sales professionals, I like to call them. And I'm still floored at how many people on a call or on a pitch just drone on and on. And I told a CEO of a startup company who wanted all of our business, I literally told him to stop talking. He talked for 12 minutes, didn't ask a single question, and I literally told him to stop. So I'm not trying to criticize him. My point is this: understanding to listen more, be humble, and ask questions before you just go in for the hard pitch is really hard because we all have a number to hit and we all have to hit our
Right.
number. And I want to tell you
Right.
my story because my catheter is so good, doctor. It does all these
Right.
things and it makes coffee, right? It's the greatest thing in the world. Slow down, right? Slow down and ask me questions, right? The needs assessment. I'm sure we all learned that in sales training school. And then we forget the needs assessment because we get in front of him or her. We haven't just got him and I really want to sell you my catheter.
Right. Yep.
So, the 2 ears in one mouth saying, or however you want to say, ask more questions and listen more is sales 101. But I'm shocked at how many people miss that. So being humble and listening more is something that I would tell Mark from 20 years ago. I would have been a much better rep had I done that. And in EQ, I think you may not be born with EQ, but you can certainly improve those characteristics of self-awareness. And well, you have motivation because you're there being a rep, but empathy and self-awareness are 2 key things that I think sometimes get left behind.
On that note, what's your best way to for someone that's listening to this and says, you know what, I want to internalize what he's saying here, and I'm going to take it to heart. What do you advise they actually go out and do, like physically do, to help them on this path to more self awareness and better EQ in their accounts?
I would say 2 things for those looking to get into the business and still trying to get that job or trying to get that next job. If you can shadow the super successful rep who's either at your current company or find a way to get with that rep at Medtronic or your dream company, go spend a day with him or her. I would push to do that. That's something you can kind of be a little pushy and aggressive to do. I think that shows the right thing. And when you're with that person, I mean, what does everybody like to do? We all like to talk about ourselves, right? So when you're shadowing that super successful rep, just interrogate them. How do you do this? And what about this? And how can I be better? And watch them work. So if you can wiggle your way into the opportunity to sit in the car with the number 1 rep at whatever company, I think that's super cool. This one's a little trickier, but if your target physician audience are general practitioners, and you can get in to spend a half a day shadowing them, listening to their needs and their struggles, you'll get a better perspective than just hammering them with, here's my new pharma, here's my new pill. So I think learning from people closing your mouth and just listening, maybe you'll be able to learn a lot from the successful rep and from the customer if you can get in front of the customer.
Absolutely. And then what about leadership? I love how you just gave this example of you were talking to a leader and you had to tell a leader to stop talking. Uh, Outside of also telling leaders they need to listen more, what kind of advice would you give from this side of things to medical sales leaders, right? The AVPs that are trying to get into the C-suite, and the C-suites that are trying to really brand themselves. What would you tell them to really be mindful of from your perspective?
So one thing I didn't do a good job of, and now later in life, I'm doing a better job of both being a mentor and a mentee. I read a great book a few years ago called The 40-40 Principle, written by a guy called Andy Christensen. And the 40-40 Principle is that we should all have a mentor who's over the age of 40 and under the age of 40, no matter where you are, because that
Wow, that's
younger
profound.
think about it. The younger person under 40 is going to have typically a better grasp of technology and social media and the wants and needs and desires of people in that age group. The person over 40, probably not as technically savvy and knows more, a little more wisdom, and knows his or her demographic better. So I just late in life figured that out. I have a mentor who's 36 and I have a mentor who's 69, and I make it intentional. I think the other thing I thought, oh, I like that guy and I respect him. That's not a mentor. So an intentional mentor, we're going to meet once a month for coffee, put it on your calendar, and we're going to just talk about life, right? There's no magic, right? You don't go to a mentor and all of a sudden, woo, learn to be a better AVP. But I think that's really important mentorship. And now that I'm the older one, I've become the mentor to some younger folks early in their career, device people in my company. Actually, I have a 13-year-old mentee I'm going to see for dinner tonight that I got through a program called Mentoring Tucson's Kids.
Very cool.
So, hanging out with my little guys act tonight. But I would submit that no matter how old you are, you're that AVP at Medtronic, this huge guy, and you run a team of 400 people. You need a mentor. You really do, and be intentional. So that's my pitch.
I love your mentor under 40, mentor over 40. I've never thought about it that way. That's really cool. I'm gonna
Good
have
book.
to
It's
take
called
that
The 40-40 Principle.
The 40-40 principle. I love it.
Yeah, great book.
So about books, and we'll have more on that a little bit later, but how do you keep it all going? I mean, you've had a very dynamic career. You were top sales rep. You killed it for a long time. You started all these 7 startups, bouncing around, making things happen, and now you're running this big organization. What do you do in your free time that kind of allows you to be this able?
Yeah, I'm a big faith guy. So active in my church, and I always kind of live by the mind, body, spirit. You and I talked about working out before, so really into doing sports and staying active. I think that challenges us no matter what our age. So that's the body. From the mind standpoint, being intellectually challenged, I've been pretty good goal writer. I don't think goals are goals unless they're written down. And I've been pretty good through the years about writing down goals. And I write down to read 10 books a year. It's a short book, long book, but I try to read. Right now I've got 4 books that are started on my bedstand, but I think staying intellectually challenged. And earlier in my career, I was reading books on cardiopulmonary surgery and stenting, right? Just sharpening my skills. So for those listeners that are looking to get into the OB space or the vascular space or the pharma space, just sucking up. Heck, you can sit on YouTube and watch videos and learn and read. So I would really submit. So that's mind and body, and then spirit. Again, I'm a faith-based guy. So, finding a higher calling and doing something for the greater good, like mentoring Zach or getting involved in your local faith-based group, whether it's a church or whatever.
Fantastic. And are you a family man?
Yeah.
Kids at home?
Yeah, 2 kids, been married 33 years to the same girl. I know, you look at me and you're like, oh my God. I was 20 when I got married. So yeah, got a daughter in Scottsdale, Arizona, and a son in Denver.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, this has been amazing, and you've given us all this wisdom. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience that's breaking in or trying to break into medical sales?
I guess after I gave my pitch of what I've done, so what? I mean, right? I can tell you I was the greatest guy ever. So what? You need to do what you want to do. And if anybody listens to Gary Vaynerchuk, he's an influencer and a social media guy. Gary V, always profane, so I won't quote him, but do what you want to do. And if your parents or your boss or your friends say you got to get into medical devices, you should be a nurse at a hospital, whatever, do what you have to do and what you want to do. And med device can give you a great career financially, work-life balance, but it's got to be what you want, not what somebody else's wants. If I give any bit of advice or any pitch, it's you be you and do what you want to do.
I love it. I love it. All right, now we're gonna wrap it up here, but we're gonna have some questions for you, and you got less than 10 seconds to answer all of these.
Woo.
And I'm not gonna preempt you. I'm just gonna ask you, and here we go. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. Best book you read in the last 6 months?
Ha! Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary.
Never even heard of that.
Dude, it's a kid's book, and I'm reading with my guy Zach, this 13-year-old. I'm trying to make him read a book.
Wow.
And
Mouse and the
Motorcycle. It's like this. I read it when I was in 7th grade. So sorry. Best book.
All right, no, check it out. All right. Best movie in the last 6 months?
Oh, Top Gun. Come on.
I still haven't seen it, so I don't know. I know nothing. I know
My
nothing.
man, Maverick. Come on.
Best meal in the last 6 months?
Oh, I'm a big cook, so I made a great New York strip the other night with asparagus. That's as good as it gets with a big cap.
New York. See, you're speaking to someone who's not a chef. What is New York strip? Is that steak or is that something else?
Yeah, it's a steak. Yeah, cut a steak called a New York strip. Yeah.
New York strip.
Yeah.
Shows my ignorance. I'm gonna have to get some New York strip then. And then last question: best experience in the last 6 months?
I bought a boat this summer and I lived on it in Lake Michigan with my wife for 90 days. It was amazing. Saw the Northern Lights. If anybody in this podcast has ever seen the Northern Lights, drove on the middle of Lake Michigan, watched the Northern Lights. Pretty spectacular.
I can only imagine. You know, Marc, it's been real. I loved having this conversation with you, and we can't wait to see more things that you do out there in the med space world. So we'll definitely be keeping track of you.
You got it. Thanks, Samuel.
And there you have it, folks. He said it. I don't think you can say it much better than the way he said it. You know, regardless what anybody suggests, recommends, or tells you to do, you have to do what you actually want to do. One thing that I probably get more of than anything when it comes to helping professionals get into medical sales, you know, whether that be pharma or med device or biotech or testing, are people that don't know where they should be. I talk to a lot of people that they really want to be in healthcare sales. They want to dedicate their life to healthcare sales, but they have no idea if they should be in pharmaceutical sales or medical device sales, or even within those two arenas, should they be going for, you know, something along the lines of women's health or neurology, or should they be examining something like spine or stents, cardiovascular, like we were just talking about today. I get that a lot. And when I dig a little deeper and I really have a real conversation, I start to hear people kind of spit out what someone has told them. And of course, if you're learning where you should be, you're going to be listening to what people tell you, but they forget to think about what they actually want. One of the things that I'll say, and I talk about this, your lifestyle, the lifestyle you desire, should be should be in strong alignment with the professional path you choose. So if you want a certain type of medical device role or a certain type of pharmaceutical sales role, it should be aligned with the lifestyle you desire. And when you're talking to all the different people about where you should be or what you should be considering, you have to make sure you have communicated your lifestyle. Because unfortunately, there are times when people just kind of jump into something and it really wasn't what they wanted to do. And then they spent a company's dime. They spent a lot of their own time. In some cases, they spent their own dime and they're not where they want to be. And they kind of have to take it back to the drawing board. So I'll jump off that soapbox. But, you know, that's something that he talks about a little bit right here in this episode, in this interview. And I couldn't bring it home that much further. So if you're out there, and maybe you are someone listening to this episode and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I really don't know where I want to be. But you know you want to be in healthcare sales, in medical sales. You know that's where you want to be. Then you already know where I'm going to tell you. Go to evolvesuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, schedule a conversation, and at the very least, let's talk about where you should be considering based on the lifestyle you desire. As always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. We do our best to bring you guests that are bringing innovation, bringing a new way of doing things to the medical sales world. And we're doing our best to educate you on all the different types of medical sales there are. Remember, medical sales encompasses all sales within healthcare. And there's so many things going on that you can align yourself with if you desire to be some sort of sales rep or consultant or clinical specialist. There's an opportunity for you. So keep listening and make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.